Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the Dungeon Dive, we are taking a look at a new little box, a small box solo dungeon crawl, and that is called Light in the Dark. And Light in the Dark is from Arcona Games, and you can actually buy this on their website at arconagames.com, and that's how I got the game. Let's take a little look at the back of the box here. So Light in the Dark, a solo dungeon crawl game set in the world of Pest. Become a plague doctor and embark on a mission to heal a region from the plague while fighting monsters and bandits. Complete quests and gain powerful abilities to overcome increasingly difficult challenges. Will you succeed in bringing light to the darkness? So I was immediately attracted by the theme of this game. I think, plague doctors are always cool for some reason. I think it's their garb. They just look dark and mysterious, right? And the fact that it is a small box solo dungeon crawl. These are all things that I really do like. And so let's take a look at what you get. And in doing so here at the beginning of this video, we are going to talk about a few issues I have with the game before we get into discussing the game. And overall, I think this game is pretty fun. It's pretty light, but there are also some good moments, and it can be challenging. And I think it does create a pretty good sense of adventure. However, I think a second edition, there's just a couple of things that I think could really elevate this game and kind of push it over that line that might separate something that's just okay to something that I would be very, very happy to recommend and have in my collection. So in the game, you are going to get a number of bosses, a number of enemies, a number of items, terrain cards, and then some different quests and character cards. And then a couple sheets, a couple little cards over here that you will keep track of different things on. Now, everything is really well made. And you also get some tokens here that you'll keep track of things. The cards are really nice, linen finish, everything looks good. The art's pretty good. It's a really well made package, especially for the price. I think it's under $20. So yeah, it's a good package of stuff. The first kind of issue I have though is with the different characters. So at first, when I opened this up, I was super excited. I was like, wow, 4 different characters. That's awesome. A lot of times in smaller games, you don't get these kinds of options. And so then I was looking at the different characters. We have the writer, the fighter, the supplier, and the explorer. And I thought, man, that's pretty cool. We have different classes here. But then the more I looked at them, the more I realized that they're not really different classes. All these different characters are really a difficulty level. And so we have the writer is at the easiest difficulty, and the explorer, Sabbath Lucar, is the hardest difficulty. And you can tell that by the crowns up at the top here. And really the only difference in the characters is their starting stats and a enemy that they are better against when they are fighting. I would have loved to have seen each one of these with a special power that they could use throughout the game. And maybe not just be difficulty, maybe figure out a way to make the game more difficult, to have difficulty levels not associated with the characters, because I think this has a little bit of a thematic disconnect. For example, here we have the easiest character, and he's just called the Rider, and he starts with a level 2 in his attacking power. But then we have the fighter here, and the fighter has a worse attacking power than the writer. That's just kind of weird, I think. And here we have the explorer, and the explorer has a really low movement value. Wouldn't an explorer have a higher movement value? And so yeah, it's just a little weird. So if you open this box up and think you're getting 4 different classes, just know that these are really just for your difficulty. Now, you're also going to get a certain number of quests, and I think this quest modular system is actually pretty interesting. We have 3 starter quests, we have 3 middle quests, and we have 3 ending quests. And when you are starting the game, you're going to take one of each. So we will shuffle up the starter quests, we will shuffle up the middle quests, and we will shuffle up the ending quests. and then we put those together in a line. So our starting quest here is says the growing threat from the bandits and other enemies grows each day. Find a way to get rid of them and give the villagers in this part of Thakea a peace of mind. So for this quest, we're going to start here, and this is kind of a timer that ticks up. We need to kill four enemies. And as we keep track of them here, then we will get 4 victory points. This is kind of a score chasing game. And as we move up, certain things will happen on this track. Here, all of the enemies on the map will respawn, so they will repopulate. Our middle quest here is the enormous region. And this says that the region is still not mapped out properly. You have to explore it further in order to reach your final objective. Explore 4 new terrain cards. And as we reach this spot here, the enemies will respawn. And as we reach this spot here, the enemies will actually get stronger. And then our final quest here is it's all about the pest. In the end, no bandits and monsters are a match for the destructiveness of the pest. I think the pest is supposed to be a pestilence. In order to minimize that destruction, you must heal as many villages as possible. And so we need to heal 4 villages. And as we move through this final quest card, the enemies will repopulate twice. They will grow in strength again. And we have to do all of this. And then if we do, we'll get an additional 10 victory points. Now that's kind of cool. I like that system. However, it's also a little bit... there's not quite as much variety as you might think, because in our first quest here, we needed to kill 4 enemies. Well, there's also a quest here where you just need to kill 3 enemies. This quest here, you need to kill 3 and heal 2 villages. So the quests are somewhat similar to one another, but I think it still is pretty cool that we get to kind of combine different elements here to make our quests. So I'm going to put our quests down here. And then as far as we'll play the easy mode, so I'll play as the rider. All right, so we'll take the rider out here. And the rider starts with a 5 health, with a 4 movement and a 2 attack power. And the rider is good at fighting these purple enemies. And I can't remember exactly what the purple enemies are. There are 4 different kind of classes of enemy. And maybe we'll find out as we look through. But when I face off against a purple enemy, I get to add an additional 1 to my die roll. And I'll put that guy here. And we'll take these cubes here, and we'll put those on our character card, on our starting stats. And then we also have our timer. And that's where we put that. That's where we keep track of the rounds. And as we tick up, we need to. So when we're on the first card, we have to do this quest. When we're on the second card, we have to do this quest. And when we're on the third card, we have to do that last quest there. And then we also have these cards here where you will keep track. You have 3 phases. You have 3 turns, a player's phase. And in each phase, you can do a movement and an optional action. And those optional actions are attack an enemy, heal a village, and you need a herb to heal a village. So another thing you can do is take an herb, and you can also take an item. And then you go on to the enemy phase, and the enemies will all move towards you, and then they will attack. And this card here is also used to keep track of the enemy's health when you fight one of the certain enemies. So that's very handy. And then we also have a card here that you can lay down in your tableau that tells you the enemy stats. So wolves, beasts, these enemies have 1 health, 1 movement, and 1 attack. And when you kill them, you get to level up your health. The bandits have a 2-2-2. When you kill a bandit, you get to level up your movement. The trolls have 3-3-2, and then you get to add 1 to your attack. And the spirits or poltergeists have a 3-4-3. That's pretty deadly there. And you get to upgrade any one of your stats. So that's kind of cool. You get a lot of really nice things to keep track of what is going on in the game. And then we can use a cube here to keep track of our phases that we are in on this card just off camera there. So we don't need any of these anymore. Now there are quite a few items also, and I think this is another area where the game could be greatly improved, and that is in the iconography and maybe in the variety of items as well. The iconography is pretty poor, I think, in this game. A good iconography, you should be able to look at it and kind of determine at least the gist of what it is saying. So if you saw if you saw this symbol here, what would you think this item allowed you to do? I'll give you just a couple seconds to maybe pause and ponder this. So we have an up arrow with a 3, and then kind of a maybe a reroll symbol with a 4 and a down arrow. So I would look at this and maybe interpret this as if you roll one die at a 3 or higher, you can re-roll a die that's a 4 or less, or something like that. But that is not even close to what this card actually does. And luckily, we do have in the back of the book here, in the instructions, we do have a clear description of each item. So this is the Greater War Charm. So here's what this iconography means. After rolling, count the value of the higher die rolled twice and ignore the value of the smaller die. For example, if you roll a 2 and a 4, your total rolled will be 8. I don't know. I can't see that from this iconography. I would have done something like, so after you roll, you have a 3 and a 5, you discard the lower and you take the highest twice, or something like that. So I don't know. The iconography is not great, but luckily we do have all of the details in the book here. And as far as the variety goes, we have a War Charm and a Greater War Charm. And the War Charm, it just gives you one additional use. We have a Greater Torch and a Torch. And again, the Greater Torch just gives you one additional use. Then we have some duplicates of others. So 2 herbs, a few basic shields, and so on. So it looks like you're getting quite a few items, but there's not as much variety as maybe you would hope when you start to unbox your game. And I think that's kind of the same way I felt about the 4 different characters. So I would like to see maybe some better iconography, some more variety in the weapons, and more variety in the characters with special character abilities. And I think those things would really elevate this game to a much higher level. And then you also get a deck of enemies, and so the enemies will come out on the board as you are exploring. We have Crimson Bandits, a Wolf Pack, Forest Giants, Cultists, that's what those are. And so those are all of your enemies, so you'll give those a shuffle there. And then we also have our bosses. And we have Catharis, the leader of the pack. We have Belarus Moonshadow, Thorin the Wise, and Isnax Telios. So each one of our enemy factions has a boss associated with it. And so you don't know which boss you're going to be fighting. So we can take our enemy cards and our boss cards and kind of put those off to the side. We can take our item cards there. And then as far as the terrain cards go, laying out the terrain as you are exploring in this game is pretty cool. It does make for some interesting paths, and I think things look neat. And so you can move from node to node along the roads. And as you can see on the tiles, not all of the roads connect. So you will be creating some dead ends. You will have to backtrack. And I think that is pretty cool there. So we have our basic terrain here. We have a few examples of those. And then we have 5 special terrains. So we have a boss encounter. So a boss tile. So we'll take that and put that aside. And then you have 4 different starting tiles, and those show you a node that your Plague Doctor will start on. And so you want to take those and shuffle those up, and you will randomly choose one starting tile. Okay, so everything is set up, and we have our starting tile, and we're ready to go. We have created our terrain deck, we have our item deck, our enemy deck, and everything. So we are starting in this tile here, 0, 0, and our starting space is over here. And on this tile, the only thing we have on this tile is a market. Okay, so we will take our one of our item tokens there and add that to the market. So that reminds us that we have something we can interact with there. And we start in this node here. And so on a turn, we get 3 actions. And an action is a movement and then an optional thing to do. So on our first turn, we will move, and our movement value for our character is 4. So we can move up to 4 nodes along the road here. And we will move into the village. I will stop for the day or for this phase, and I will use my optional action to pick up this item. So we'll discard this token here, and we'll draw an item. And hey, we have that Greater War Charm. So we can use this when we roll our dice. Of course, like I said, we discard the lowest and do the highest twice. And we can actually do that 3 times before discarding it. So that's pretty great. I will add a white cube onto that item to keep track of how many times I've used it. And that is just down below off camera. Sorry, I can't get everything on the table here or on the camera here. Okay, so for our second turn here, we will move. Let's move to the north. So let's go 1, 2, 3. You stop when you're at the edge and you spend a movement point 4 to draw a tile. And we're moving into this area that has a lot going on actually. But this area over here is actually cut off by this river. I think this is really cool. This is a good use of tile art. But we have some enemies, we have a village and enemies and another market. So we will put that there. And then we will add our tokens. So I have a village, or a market, we'll put an item there. We have a village that needs to be healed. And to do that, we need to pick up herbs and spend the herbs at that village. And then we have another enemy. So for the enemies, we will take our enemy deck and let's see what we have here. We have some Crimson Bandits. So we'll put a Crimson Bandit token there. And down here closest to us, we have, oh no, the cultists. That is terrible. These guys are really strong. Okay, so we'll put that enemy there like that. Okay, so we don't need these cards anymore. They can just be discarded because all of our stats are on this handy dandy cheat sheet that we add to our tableau. Okay, so if I move 1 more space towards these cultists, I do have to fight them. And they have 3 health, they move 4, and they have an attack value of 3. That's pretty strong, but I do have my Greater War Charm, which should help me quite a bit. So let's chance it. I'm going to take my next turn here. Actually, let's see. How many did 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll finish this turn by moving my final spot 5. Okay. And now I do have to engage with this enemy. And so, like I said, this enemy has 3, 4, and 3, and we can keep track of their health using this card here. And so they have 3 health. Okay. And so let's do some combat now. Okay, so we will roll all 4 dice, and the black d6 are for the enemy. Whoa, man, lots of high rolls there. Okay, so we have the enemy has 11 plus 3 is 14. And I'm going to use my Greater War Charm. Man, that enemy just completely obliterated my roll here. So let's see, I have a 6, so we'll use the Greater War Charm. So we'll discard the 5, we'll use the 6 twice, so we have 12. And then I get a +1 for fighting against cultists because of my character. So that's 13. And then I have a 2 attack value, so that's 15. I barely beat that cultist. Okay, so the cultists will take 1 point of damage, so they're down to 2. So let's do that again. Okay, so the cultists have 9. I have 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, but they also add 3, so they beat me, but I will use my Greater War Charm again to double my 5 to 10. So now I beat that cultist again, so now they're down to 1 hit point. Fighting cultists is very deadly here. And let's see here. 4, 5, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so with ties, I believe that ties go to the hero. And so I think that would be, I could use my Greater War Charm just to solidify that victory, but I'm pretty sure we tied there. And so that would be an example of combat. We would have killed that cultist, removed the cultist token, and then we do get to add +1 to any stat. Now, my health is already topped up in this character, but I think I'm going to add +1 to my attack power because my first quest here is to kill 4 enemies. And so we will add a white cube here to show that I have killed 1 enemy. And let me move all of this down here and move this down here. Okay, so now we can continue exploring here. And let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3. I'll stop and I'll pick up this additional item. And what do we have here? We have the torch wand. And so the torch wand, what does this allow us to do? The torch wand, re-roll dice. Okay, yeah, so that makes sense. Re-roll the dice, and I can use that twice. Okay, so that's all of my actions. So now we go on to the enemy's turn. And if there were any enemies that could reach me, they would move towards me. But there aren't, because this enemy over here, these bandits, they are cut off from me. So they're just going to stay there. And then we move our timer down 1, and then we continue playing as we go. And so, yeah, you just want to keep exploring, looking for the things that you need in order to solve your quests, and then maybe fight the boss and heal some villages. For villages, you will put a village token here, but you do need to go and you do need to find an herb, and you can pick up the herb as an item. And then you can move into a village and spend the herbs to heal the villages. And by the end of a session, I think the map looks really cool. I really, really do like these map cards. I think they create an interesting space to play in. And I like the way that the different nodes work. I like how the enemies come out. I like how the markets and the villages and the herbs come out. I think it's pretty cool. It's a neat little kind of wilderness dungeon crawl. And it does pack quite a bit of game into this box. I only wish that the characters were a little different, and maybe that there was just a better way to handle difficulty levels. And I wish that maybe the quests were a little different. There was more variety in the items, and better iconography. And I think even with those things present, I think I could still recommend this game, especially for the price, and especially because it is in a small box. There's not a lot at stake to buy this. It's cheap, and you can shove it in your shelf in a tiny little space. It doesn't take up a lot of space. It does take up a pretty good size to play. It's not a small game on the table. As you explore, you will need quite a bit of space to put your terrain cards. But overall, I'm pretty happy with Light in the Dark. I think it's a pretty neat little game. And I'm hoping that this company continues to create these kinds of small box solo dungeon crawls. I think we might have something to look forward to in the future. So, all right, you guys, well, hope you enjoyed this video. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.